Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Stay Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
Hey, everybody. What's going on?
I guess I'm everybody there. I paused to let the audience answer, but they had nobody there to answer. Not much is going on in my world. I finally got to see Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I feel like that's something I'm ready to discuss. Because
that's the sequel to Godzilla.
Yeah.
2018?
2014. And wow. King of the Monsters is 2019.
Okay.
And
then we are sitting in the shadow of Godzilla versus Kong.
Right. And then in the middle there, you also have Kong Skull Island, which I loved. I absolutely loved Kong Skull Island.
Oh, man, I forgot that there was like a revisit to the Kong verse.
Dude, and it's a period piece, and it features like 3 members of the MCU, and some third thing. Oh, it's awesome. John C. Reilly. John C. Reilly was the third thing that I couldn't think of.
Oh, wait,
he's MCU as well. That's 4 MCU. Mm-hmm. Does he count? Does he count as a member of the MCU for his one role as Nova?
Yeah, that's going to be a weird one going forward, is talking about whether or not people have actually shown up in the cinematic universe just because they've shown up on screen for a couple of moments, right? But yeah, no, I think that he had a character role. It was not just for one scene. He is in the story and shows up multiple times within that movie. So yeah, I'd say that he has had a role in the MCU.
Yeah, there's definitely that big emotional moment at the end. But he's not like Captain Marvel or Loki or Sam Fury. Nick Fury is his name.
Sam Fury.
He's Sam Fury. Let's just talk about it.
So was it related to the Peter Jackson one in any way?
No.
Or was it okay?
There may have been some references. They've done a lot of good things in this Monarch universe, which I believe is the way to refer to it. Monarch being the pan-global organization that is responsible for tracking the Titans. Which is what Godzilla and Kong and Mothra and the Mutos and Rodan and King Ghidorah are. They're called Titans in this universe. I'm not sure why they're called Titans, but they are.
Is Monarch first of all, is Monarch new to this universe with these movies, or is Monarch something that's been in these movies before? Because this is not the first time that Godzilla has had a extended universe, shall we say.
Right. As far as I know, giving it the title Monarch is new. I'm not a big Godzilla guy. There's the terrifying reveal. I think prior to the 2014 Godzilla, I had seen 1998's Godzilla, starring Matthew Broderick and Hank Azaria on screen. You know, it's one of the rare Hank Azaria on screen appearances. And it's not very offensive either, because we've talked about some other Hank Azaria on-screen appearances that are quite offensive. But him as, like, regular camera guy...
Yeah, the New Yorker camera guy that almost gets stepped on, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a drive-in movie for me. Go back to it, an old conversation.
That was a movie that I saw in theater because we trailer checked it to go back to another old conversation. Okay. But also, like... because of Jurassic Park, everybody was excited about 98's Godzilla. Mm-hmm. And in retrospect, how dumb we all were.
I mean, it was the idea that, like, you know, big lizard on screen, right? And the thing about Godzilla is that he is supposed to be the biggest. And I think it's one of the worst offenses of that movie is that there is no consistent size to Godzilla in that movie. And no explanation for how Godzilla like does things like gets into Madison Square Garden.
That's all I'm thinking about. As soon as you think, like, and also I remember the big reveal was so in Jurassic Park they were able to fertilize their own eggs, right? Like that's a big thing. Godzilla's gonna do that too, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's like a weird there's always that weird moment in these movies where they have to talk about asexual reproduction in an awkward way.
Yeah.
And like, and somebody has to make the comment about how boring asexual reproduction sounds. It's like a go-to joke in the 90s.
Yep. Oh, the 90s. But yeah, so it was that, and it was Godzilla Destroy All Monsters.
Yes.
Which is just
the one that I saw.
Everybody saw that movie. It's like, I feel like it was a rite of passage for our generation. Is like some random Friday night, you're a little bit buzzed, you're a little bit stoned, and your one friend who's way into kaiju movies is like, "This is my moment to shine," and they're all gonna watch this Godzilla movie.
Screw Matthew Broderick. We're putting this one on, and it's like basically how that conversation always starts.
But the saddest part about it is that guy, that dude. Chalt, right? That Chalt guy, he is hoping that he's going to find other fans of the kaiju series. Like, this is going to be a gateway movie.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that ever happened.
No, I think that the gateway movie for kaiju films has to now be Pacific Rim, right? Like, that has to be.
And Pacific Rim is just so different to everything else in the kaiju atmosphere.
Yeah, and it is and it isn't. The like the weird focus on the humans is actually something that's very old school kaiju. It wasn't until later that it became more about like showing the big monsters than it did about the people, right? Because like at their heart, like kaiju films are basically like our 1950s like stock sci-fi horror films, right? Like the you think about like the Blob and like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and like all of these other like weird sci-fi movies where it's always about like a thing that's bigger than us. Them is phenomenal.
Speaking of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, we recently did that episode looking at Riverdale and To Riverdale and Back Again and the whole Archie universe. What we didn't mention, and also totally not the reason we did it, is the 80th anniversary of Archie comics.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't mention that at all, but now talking about tall woman, small town, that's a thing that we didn't touch on. But yeah, 80 years of Archie. So if you've been waiting, go listen to that episode. We had a lot of fun, and I listened to it last night, and it was a good time. But these the large monster movie, like it was sci-fi. It was sort of what sci-fi was in the 50s.
Yeah. The thing from outer space. I mean, there's a lot there of
Day
like,
of the Triffids. We could do this all day.
But the idea that it all represents like an opposing force outside of our control coming in and changing our world like completely out of our control, right? And the idea that with Godzilla movies and stuff like that is a direct response to stuff like the end of World War II, in Japan reeling from getting hit with not one but two atomic bombs, and how that is kind of transposed into cinema is like a really fascinating when you look at like the Godzilla movies and how there's always this sense of hope being brought, even though doom and gloom is being spoken of constantly by basically the adults in the room, right? And it's always the kids that are always just like, no, Godzilla's our friend. It's like, okay, all right. And that's why I'm really interested to see where they go with this new universe, because without that like specter, without that attitude behind it, what are these movies supposed to be? And I fear that it's just going to be a CGI, a special effects fest, which is fun, but we have proven time and time again not substantial enough to please large audiences.
Yeah, and it's very strange because I was supposed to see the 2019 Godzilla film, but it was the last time I went to a movie on a Tuesday. And that feels like an important thing, not because of the fact that nobody's going to the movies at all right now, but the fact that, when we were younger, right, 2007 is like this marquee year in my mind for us going to the movies every Tuesday and seeing 2 movies minimum, because it was $5 to do it. And we saw so many films, and it's sort of the baptism our friendship had, Sejin, was seeing those movies together. And I hadn't gone because if you want to see movies and you want to be ahead of the spoiler curve, which is incredibly shortened nowadays, like a spoiler was tweeted out by the WandaVision Twitter account 8 hours after they posted it. And it's just like, that's from you. That's from you guys being like, hey, check it out. Of course, WandaVision's special because everybody says that it's like, I guess not everybody. I found a lot of things about like, it's so slow. The show, where's this show going? And to be fair, the spoiler they posted is like, here's where the show is going. Please go watch. Please don't be upset that the first episode is in black and white and set in the 50s. It's like pleading. And then I saw a hot take that, you know, we'll talk about it later. Sejin, unfortunately not caught up yet with WandaVision, and that's fine. I think that the benefit of another episode before we record again will give us better grounding to have a discussion on what the show is, especially when I think about the hot take I read immediately before recording of someone like, you said it was slow, but that's called character development. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if the character development is why the fourth episode turned things around. And yeah, so that's it. But go back to Godzilla, sorry. So I was supposed to see it. I go on a Tuesday, and, you know, because I go Thursday nights, because all the movies pre-release on Thursday night. And they start showing them now at like 5 o'clock. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. So why would I go on Tuesday when I can go on Thursday and still get matinee prices? Like, that's the other crazy thing. Because it's at 5, the ticket is matinee priced, and that's worth it to me. So my friends are like, hey, we're going to see Godzilla. I'm like, that's fine. Now me, I don't know. We haven't been to the movies together in a long time. And I certainly don't think it was the case when we were going. But I try to arrive half an hour beforehand to make sure that I get the seats that I want and I get to see everything that they're going to show. The trailers are part of the experience, especially as the price of a ticket went up and up and up.
Yeah. No, man, I'm a firm believer that like 20 minutes minimum, because you want to be able to find your seat, and also inevitably the bathroom break, the run to grab candy. You want to get that all out of your system before, like you're saying, even before the trailers start for me.
Yeah, because I want to experience it. So I get there my normal time, and I am the first person in the auditorium to watch Godzilla. And then I'm watching it steadily fill up with people. And the people I'm supposed to be meeting, they are not part of these people who are steadily filling it up. And I'm like, you know, I kind of don't want to see this alone. I'll be honest with you. Like, Godzilla isn't the movie I want to see alone. So as we get to like a minute to showtime, I'm like, I'm going to go, right? I'll get a refund for my ticket. And they did. They gave me just a pass to get another ticket. And that was very good. And they're like, and I can't believe that either, because it's Tuesday. So I paid less money for my ticket and they still gave me a readmit pass. Yeah. I mean, I'd been going to this theater for a long time. I had made friendships and relationships, but it was nice to them to be like, yeah, we'll just give you a readmit and just come back and you can see it another time. And I leave, but then as I'm leaving, just the front area where you buy your tickets was mobbed. It looked like Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain is exactly where my mind jumped to, with just how long the line was.
What year? This is 2018?
This is 2019.
What movie was out?
Godzilla King of the Monsters.
That's yeah. Okay.
There's the answer right there. It was for Godzilla King of the Monsters, I guess, because nothing really came out alongside that one. And the theater was only showing that in one auditorium. It wasn't like multiple. It was a smaller theater. But to see the line like that, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be with this many people in a movie. Like, one of the other nice things about the Thursday thing is not sold out, because a lot of people still don't know that happens. And, you know, now it doesn't even matter that it happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the other thing is like Thursday night going out to a movie is not people have shit to do on a Friday, right? And like that was part of the reason we like going on the Tuesdays as well, is in addition to the pricing, like we had the run of the place to ourselves.
Right, until everybody found out about it, apparently. And I've just watched the amount of people on the Tuesdays steadily grow to like, it's not fun being here, because it's fun to have the run of the place. It's fun to be the only 4 dudes in a movie theater seeing hair. Hairspray, that's different. I don't know if I'd want to watch hair in a theater with you and the other people we used to go to the movies with.
it would be one of the few times that I would think we would all have to sit in our own areas of the theater.
Yeah. Because we would sit next to each other, too. There was none of that, like, seat spacing thing. I don't get that. I can't talk to you if they're a seat away. But yeah, so I avoided. I didn't. Not that I avoided. I didn't see it. But then all of the people I was supposed to meet, right? I told them, I got there. The line was so long, I didn't want to deal with it. I just left. And they're like, "Oh man, you made the right decision. What a waste of time." And I was sad because I'm like, I was kind of excited. Like the 2014 Godzilla film is not great, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I don't have any fond memories of it, but
there is a subsect of people that when that movie came out were like, "Oh, you got to see this. You got like I can't believe nobody's talking about this movie." And I was like, people are talking about this movie. It's just not great what they're saying. But people, it's like, yeah, and it has its fan base, so like I'll give it that.
My favorite part about Godzilla 2014 is Wanda and Pietro from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So right. Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yep.
I don't know where that name was, but I found it. They're married in the movie.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
And it's like 2 months after they were twins in Age of Ultron.
And like a set of twins that notoriously in like the fiction has had weird relationships, and like in that movie has a bit of a weird relationship. So like it really was more like it wasn't introducing the idea, it was more like twisting the knife of that idea.
Yeah, it was just this thing where I'm like, why is this happening? And then there's also the weirdness that both Quicksilvers are in the Kick-Ass movies as Kick-Ass and Ass Kick.
I forgot that he's that what's his nuts shows up in the other one.
Yeah,
man,
it's just weird. It's just all so much strangeness regarding the Maximoff twins, but that's what I recall about that movie. That and Bryan Cranston is how they sell Godzilla 2014. And spoilers for a 5-year-old movie that you're probably never going to see. Not even 7-year-old movie that you're probably never going to see. He dies in like the first 11 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, it's a total Drew Barrymore move.
He is a sacrificial lamb, and then and then the movie happens, and it's cool that like the Mutos as the villains in that is excellent because they've always been one of my favorite monsters from the Godzilla mythos. I haven't watched it, but the idea of like, oh, there's a whole hive of these giant bastards.
Yeah.
That like so we can have Godzilla fight them all the time. That can be our first act of any Godzilla movie is some Mutos like, oh, I'm eating cows today.
I feel like the Godzilla versus Kong concept, right, in that same vein, is like late to the game. Like we did Civil War. Like you should have came out like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, it's strange. Well, I don't think that they expected it. So everybody was gun shy after the Mummy remake that also came out in 2017. Because Kong Skull Island comes out in March of 2017. And that is the one where like hearts and minds opened. I loved that movie. And the only like shade that's cast upon that movie is the night I saw it, I went to a meeting of the Rhode Island Film Collaborative because I was like, for some reason, I'm like, I guess I'll try doing this. I was looking for other activities in 2017, and the Say Report is the one that stuck. But, I was trying to like go out there and branch and see what I could find. And I get into a discussion with a guy. He's like, Kong Skull Island, huh? And I'm like, I actually just saw it tonight. And I'm my usual Devin effervescent self, excited to discuss this movie that I really liked because I've seen Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Yeah.
And literally anything compared against that is a pretty good movie.
It's a pretty good Kong film.
Yeah. And he just started tearing into it. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do this because I don't want to have to tell you why you're wrong.
man.
That's not why I'm here. I'm not here to fight about movies at the Rhode Island Film Collaborative. But it was very much judgment on his like personal level, where like, but if you're at a film collaborative meeting, and these are people who like make films, it's not just we like movies and we're meeting up once a month. Like the film collaborative, it was so you could meet other people in the biz in Rhode Island to get your movie made.
Yeah, I mean, just more evidence that even before COVID, people didn't know how to talk to each other in public. Like,
yeah, and I'm like, no, we're not having a conversation where you piss on this movie that I just saw. Like, I'm not going to give you that that arena. You don't get that stage with me. I'm not going to engage with you. I enjoyed it. You didn't enjoy it, and that's going to be the end of this conversation. And I've moved past it. But I liked that movie so much that I told my mother and sister they had to see it, because it's not the type of movie that anyone in this family would ever see, Kong Skull Island. And I really sold it on the director, Jordan Voight Roberts, as the director, and the fact that they both loved The Kings of Summer, which was his like debut feature film. And they went and saw it, and they absolutely loved it. And that's why I'm like, so Kong Skull Island is this big shift, right? Everything works right here. And the problem is then in August of that same year, The Mummy comes out, and Universal Pictures is prepared for their dark universe.
Right.
And it falls on its face.
Yeah, hard.
So you go back to the drawing board with Godzilla King of the Monsters, because King Kong ends with the reveal that the guys working there are now part of the Monarch system who are monitoring Titans. And it feels like we have someone that we want him to meet. And it's Godzilla. And it's like, oh, it's going to happen. Like, that should be the next movie. But they pull a Skyfall where they make another movie that hopefully will appeal to everybody and burn off any bad blood that could be in the water. And it ends up failing because they're also trying to hedge their bets in the event that this movie falls flat on its face, the way the Mummy did. Like, so there's too many monsters in Godzilla King of the Monsters, and really the only ones that fight are Riordan, Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. But you also see the Behemoth, you see Mutos, you see the Spider, you see Scylla. Like, they all show up in the movie to be like, there are other ones out there, and they're all being called by their alpha, right? Because it's just two alphas fighting, right? If you want to talk about... And people hated that movie. People did not like Godzilla King of the Monsters, especially their target demographic.
Yeah.
So that when I heard that Godzilla vs. Kong was supposed to come out last year, I was kind of like, all right, so they're just trying to rush it out because people didn't like this, but they thought they liked it enough in the first weekend that like, we need to finish the sequel now to capitalize on this. And then people like didn't like, and then they had a huge drop off. So I don't know. So then I watch it because I'm excited to see Kong Skull Island Kong again. That character really worked for me. And that's so weird to say about a monster, but I love when he's not just a big monkey, but that he's actually like a weird, like sort of missing link that also happens to be 60 stories tall.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, but that you're talking about, you like the human element. I mean, and that is the story of King Kong is and that's what makes a good Kong movie is when he is human. And I mean, all the way back to the original, it's his love for this woman. It's his beauty that killed the beast, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But so we sit down to watch Godzilla King of the Monsters. I made the whole family watch it, and they're like, this isn't our type of movie, but it's your choice. And then the human elements are the stuff that still appealed to them. And I'm like, yeah, because the human elements of this is good. And I think that when you call your movie Godzilla King of the Monsters, people are expecting Godzilla destroy all monsters.
Yeah.
And that's not what the film is. There's a lot of, I mean, spoilers for this movie that's now 3 years old or 2 years old, but I still want to talk about it. Vera Farmiga's character as like, I'm killing the world with the Titans so that we can be reborn. Like, that speech is scary. And it's just like, this is great. And Charles Dance is there. Like, I love it. And bringing in Charles Dance, that's like a real swinging your dick move on the part of Godzilla King of the Monsters, because Charles Dance was supposed to be a central Draculian figure in the Dark Universe.
Right.
So they're like,
yeah.
we need to remind people
Dracula
and show
Untold,
them
right?
we're
Like
better.
he was the old guy in the cave, right?
Yeah, he's the old guy in the cave who then we see in modern England at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really weird. Is he also no? Who plays who plays Van Helsing in Dracula 2000 that we watched that we learn was shooting up? That's not also Charles Dance, is it?
No, it's not Charles Dance. It's who the hell is it? It's not Ian McKellen. Oh, it's one of those Michael Goddard, original, the second Dumbledore. Michael Gambon. It's Michael Gambon.
Michael Gambon.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Michael Gambon. I'm not 100%.
Christopher Plummer.
Is it Christopher Plummer?
It's Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
That's who it is.
Makes more sense, actually.
I'm actually feeling better now that I thought it was Charles Dance, because, I mean, Christopher Plummer is basically like a New York version of Charles Dance.
He's American Charles Dance. What a terrible time to be a fan of Dracula 2000, Devin. How dare you forget who plays Van Helsing? To which my argument would be, because the other guy's in Hackers, and that might be the perfect movie.
All man.
Right. So yeah, so that's where I'm at with that. I'm now super excited for Godzilla vs. Kong. I haven't seen the trailer, but everybody kind of lost their minds over it on Sunday, and whatever. I'm not going to watch the trailer.
Well, and I think part of it, and part of the whole idea is, I'm not saying that we are in a place for this to start happening, but people are ready to get back to a normal, right? And the idea of going back to the movies and being able to see it is the perfect pitch, and it is the perfect trailer to remind you of why going to theaters, it will still be a thing. Even if we still end up doing this day and date release stuff for the rest of time, and we have to talk about the Disney and the announcement with Raya and the Last Dragon that they're going to try and do the Premier Access thing again. But like, even if that becomes part of the equation going forward, we're not going to lose the theater experience, right? And I think that that's the reason that people really lost their mind about that trailer is, you're not wrong. There is definitely a love out there for Kong, especially after Kong Skull Island, and then like a desire to see more of him. There is a weird sect of people that are super into Godzilla, and then like it has this like Rocky, like it almost is one of those things where like you kind of want to go because you want to see if it's going to be a train wreck type situation coming from that angle, right? So you have a cult love and a hate watch crowd coming together. It's going to be big news, right? So I'm very interested to see how it does, both like critically and financially and stuff like that, because I'm all for these kinds of movies. Like, even if they don't turn out great, like the last two Godzilla films, like I am happy that they exist in the world, because it's the kind of entertainment that sometimes you just need, right? And I feel like a lot of movies don't get made in that vein, and when they do get made, like the Godzilla films, you can sense the trepidation in everybody making them, and like we just don't know how to have fun anymore, right? And part of it is because we haven't had the money to have fun for 20 years. Well, but yeah, but I am very excited to see what happens.
Everybody's just so protective of IPs these days that nobody wants to risk it with something like this, and I'm excited that they are taking the risk on it. But there's that pallor in the room on the fact that this is part of the HBO Max 17. So this will be released to anybody who has HBO Max.
Yeah.
So as much as it's a celebration of going to the theater, it also weirdly will reach almost everybody who has HBO Max.
I mean, anybody, well, and anybody that has access to the internet, and like, I don't mean this to sound as snobbish as it sounds, but like, it's not hard to get a hold of HBO Max for it, right?
Yeah.
Unlike what Disney's now doing, I cannot believe that they have the gall to try and do this again with the Premier Access stuff. With they secretly snuck in that they were gonna do at the end of the Raya and the Last Dragon trailer, which everybody's been kind of just like waiting for to see the full trailer since the teaser came out a couple of months ago. So like all of this excitement for this trailer. and nobody is talking about how at the end of that trailer they blatantly talk about how it's going to be available on Disney Plus with premiere access. And what that means is it's the pay us money on top of the fact that you're paying for Disney thing that they tried with Mulan that just like shot them in the foot.
They fell on their face.
But
And
we say that, but here they are trying it again. So maybe like as much as like from the outside it looks like it didn't work, if they made enough bank on Mulan and they realized we could do this again, because they didn't do it with Soul, and I thought that that was an indication that they just were going to drop that conception, that concept going forward, right? And I guess not. I guess is all I can say to that is the fact that like when Soul came out and it didn't have that, it was same day on Christmas, and maybe it's gonna just be that like Pixar movies aren't done that way. Maybe it's gonna just be that like with Soul they were just still kind of on the fence of figuring out how to recover from what happened with Mulan. I don't know. But yeah, the fact that they're gonna try and charge people more money on top of what you're already paying them to see this movie is I just can't believe they're going back to that well.
I think it's an Ouroboros situation where they release Hamilton and everybody loses their collective mind to watch Hamilton when it releases on Disney Plus.
Right.
So then the big wigs who are in charge of financial decisions at Disney Plus say, all right, the next time we have a movie that's like this caliber, like people are interested in it, that was going to go to theaters, we need to try to make the money that we didn't really make because everybody just got to watch Hamilton with their regular subscription. So then that movie is Mulan, which is the worst film you can do because of the controversy surrounding it. But they're really just looking as this was our next major Disney release. Let's do it and let's see what happens. Mulan fails. Spectacularly, Mulan fails. So they're like, all right, well, we tried it. Now let's just drop this whole thing. We made whatever money we're going to make. We'll release Soul for free. And Soul, again, does gangbusters. Nowhere near Hamilton numbers, but everybody watched it. And the difference with Hamilton and Soul is people were kind of trapped during both of those times. Like, and I don't just mean like because of the pandemic. I mean, you're home on Christmas. Yeah. If you can watch Soul for free, you're probably gonna do it.
Yeah, you're gonna watch the new any Pixar movie with the family on Christmas. It's already up on this app that you've already got. It's a perfect storm, right? Yeah. Like they really put themselves in a phenomenal position with that film, and the same with Hamilton. Is
Hamilton
that,
dropping on in July 4th weekend. Like people are home, so they're gonna watch Hamilton.
Yeah, and also it's the opportunity to see Hamilton, a Broadway shit. Like there's a whole element.
There's other elements to it, but I'm talking more the captivity. I think you have a captive audience if you release a movie on a holiday like that where people are home and they can just watch it. But then because Soul does so well, they're like, oh, Mulan must have been a fluke, right? Mulan must have been an issue because we didn't consider the controversy surrounding it. So we'll charge again for our next major release, which is Raya and the Last Dragon. And we're going to see if it does well or not. And if it doesn't do well, they will give up the conceit again.
Yeah.
Until a film does do well. Like, it just seems that, like, they're chasing the success and they're willing to eat their own tail doing it.
They're chasing the dragon? Yeah. There's no, I think you're totally right. I think it's reactionary, like nonsense, like from the get-go on all of this sort of stuff. I mean, even the gall to try and charge $30 period is just a reaction to the fact that they're like, shit, we're not going to have movies in the theater. What are we going to do to make any money? Like, and it's like, calm down. Like, there's ways to figure this out. Clearly, like Warner Brothers and HBO, like basically they laid out like what is possible. Like they kind of threw the gauntlet down with the announcement that there was going to be like day and date releases basically every month this year with their films, and like the idea that they basically threw their hands up and said, we're just going to do this for the whole year, even though like we know that there's vaccines on the way, even though like there's we're hitting a point where that may not even be necessary, and they still said, no, we're just going to just do this. The fact that Disney is now bouncing all over the place to me is an even worse look, right? I don't know, man. I also don't know, Rhea is the end of this year, right? And I, by that point, people may actually be able to go and just see it in movie theaters, right? And pretty regularly. So like, who's gonna spend that money to watch it at home? It almost is like it's gonna be kind of a true test of this formula, because this is the point at which like it's not, you're not trapped, right? Like that captivity is no longer part of the equation. And so if people have the ability to go out and see it in theaters at a cheaper price for themselves, you probably won't hear as much like, rambling about on the internet about how it's the end of all times, right? And then like and so that'll be quieted. People can make the decision to go out and see it in the theater, and if they're like, if I'm going to spend $30, I'll see it in the theater. Okay, do it. Like there's that whole element to it. But I still think you're going to end up with a lot of people that are going to be like, okay, I know I complained about this last time, but it's still nicer to watch it at home.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole theater industry it has shifted forever,
Yeah,
and it's going to become a boutique business, and you're not going to see the same level of theatrical releases
yeah,
when you can release at home, and people now are mentally okay with watching a movie that way,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that profit goes directly to you, and you're not spending near the same amount you'd spend on marketing or on distribution costs. So I don't know. We're sitting in a real eye of the storm moment for
I mean,
entertainment that way.
yeah, more than we've even let on yet, because as we speak, we are also sitting in the middle of AMC theaters possibly being saved by a bunch of fucking like dweebs on the internet.
It's
We
mean
are
to call them dweebs, but I get why you would think
I
that.
mean
Yeah.
of all of the nerds on the internet, these are the nerdiest of nerds, because these are the guys that sit around and trade stocks all day. And everybody keeps talking about how it's a bunch of 18-year-olds on like in their parents' basement, and that is disingenuous. The belief that just because that they are on a subreddit on Reddit, like they must be kids, they must be they must be teens that are out to like ruin the world, is such a fallacy. Like, this is a subreddit of people on our Wall Street bets, is that is made up of people from age 12 to all the way up to like ages like 60 and above, that just happen to have money that they want to throw at the stock market. And Wall Street Bets whole idea is like, do the dumbest thing with it. Like, if you've got $2,000, like, go out and buy $2,000 of shit stock and just see what happens. That's the whole point of that subreddit. And some guys get on there and they're like, I made $300,000 today because I bought these weird like fucking like pork futures or some nonsense. And then like other people are like, oh, I lost $6,000 like instantly because I bought a bunch of this shit and then it tanked and the company no longer exists. And it's like, yep, that's the risk on this thing. And the fact that they decided to use this like this weird power that they have, this buying power collectively, to actually like change the landscape of not just Wall Street and business, but also like video games and movies this weekend is pretty interesting. And like, it'll never be repeated. You better believe it. The regulations that are going to come out of this move this week are going to be insane, and it's going to basically put a stop to any fun that anybody's ever going to be able to have in this way ever again, which, for better or for worse, because it is pretty volatile, like market shit that like I don't fully understand. But the fact that AMC Theaters was able to announce that they were able to pay off more than half of their $900 million debt that they went into in order to save their ass just 2 months ago, and they were able to pay off $600 million of it this weekend because of what happened, is a pretty big like piece of news. They like AMC Theaters 2 months ago basically was like, we don't know if we're going to exist tomorrow. And then they somehow scrambled and pulled together, I think the full amount was like $920 million in like in basically loans from just anybody and everybody that could give them money so that they could stay afloat until the end of COVID. And then like just this weekend being able to pay back over half of that without even being out of the COVID bubble yet is like huge. GameStop has very smartly like not said dick about anything that's going on, and I think it's because they don't they don't want to live. I'm pretty sure that the people that own GameStop are like, guys, we've been trying to quietly like sunset this business for years, and you just won't let it die.
And that's strange because if that were the case, then you would imagine they would have already sold their shares, the people
Some of
who
them
own
have.
it. And some of them have, that because we've seen that.
Yeah.
But the big difference between AMC and GameStop is AMC being able to take that and pay off their loans means that the shares they had in their company, they offloaded some of them while the price was super high.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do it. And the risk in that is when you're selling off your own shares, there's the potential that you lose control of your company, right?
Yeah.
If
For
someone
sure.
else becomes a majority holder. Now,
Well, and so what happened in a lot of cases, like just to kind of stay in that for a second,
yeah,
is that they went to people that they borrowed from, and they said to them, "Hey, real quick, you see how good our stock is doing? Why don't we trade you some of our stock for that money that we owe you?" And so they got kind of they actually didn't even have to like touch that sort of thing, and then because then those guys, the concept is those guys then turned around and sold their stock and got the money back that they paid for and then some. So like in a weird way, like the stock isn't centralized in any way for that to actually be like a huge issue, unless like somebody is like behind the scenes buying up a bunch of stuff, because you do risk losing control of the company in some way. But the way that you could bat that is you make sure that you're not selling all of your stock to one person.
right. But you're thank you for covering that whole side of it, because I didn't realize that they were just trading their stock, which is the smart thing to do, because currently it's a bubble.
Yeah.
And it's sort of false inflation of the cost of the stock. False inflation is wrong. It gives negative connotations as to what is happening, but there's a reason why the cost is going up and up and up. It's not just because now we have a third popcorn size between medium and large.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like it's market manipulation.
Yeah.
Like as much as we want to talk about these guys as the heroes of the whole event, these guys on Wall Street that's doing this thing, and they are, but we can't ignore the fact that Robin Hood was still stealing, right? Like that's still part of the story.
Yeah,
So like,
thank you. But I feel GameStop, they're less willing to sell off their what they are while they're high. But I think it's the basic GameStop problem. It's the mentality of how that company is run, where you know they're still selling video games in 2021, and that's like their major like good. That's the business that they're in.
right.
And the big thing about video games in just the retail marketplace is it's always a gamble with them, like you selling high on that, and they're used to just holding out. and them holding out for like a time where they can be profitable again is what put them into the situation where what is happening right now could occur.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
don't
now that
think
things are on the upswing, I don't think that GameStop is moving stuff around to actually make themselves profitable. I don't think that GameStop is going to recover what they are because of what's happening, the way that we saw AMC able to.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think that GameStop is making the same moves, so it's going to be two very different outcomes for sure. And I think I do think though that part of it is that the people that own GameStop very much, especially at this point in the story, they didn't intend to save GameStop when they got involved with it. Like it very much was like almost it was vultures coming to pick meat off the bones. Like they were like, we're gonna jump in here, we're gonna get what we can out of trying to see if we can like turn it into a memorabilia shop as opposed to a game shop. Like there's a lot of moves that are made purely financially with GameStop in the last like 5 years, nothing to do with making the customer or employee experience better, entirely all about how much money can we get out of people. And so like I don't think that they're interested in resuscitating it, unlike AMC, where we have heard all year how much they want to try and survive what's happening this year because they really like it's important to them to exist as a company, you know, and take that for what you will. You know, obviously they're still trying to make money, but their belief is that like they've got something that people are still going to want at the end of all of this. And you know, and they're not wrong. I'm So I'm curious, going back to what you were saying about stuff like when cinemas become that boutique style experience, how AMC fits into that, because they've really changed the landscape of what's going to happen with film after this. Because up until this weekend, we thought AMC was going to be dead, and like they're just like one of the big wigs. If they were out of the game, like it really meant kind of a sign of things to come, you know. But now that's not happening. So what are we looking at now? I still think you're right. I still think we're going to see boutique experiences, but now there's going to still be this player in the game that we just didn't expect, you know?
I think part of that boutique experience is going to be rental of theaters. I think that that's something that they were always trying to push, was to get people to rent their theaters.
Yeah.
And going forward, if there are less movies that are being distributed, that means that there are going to be more open spaces for people to rent. And it would be more profitable if the person has to pay the rental fee and the fee for the film, and that's what dictates the schedule of these films, rather than the company doing it. So we can have 8 Wonder Womans going at the same time for 8 separate groups who've rented out that theater, where before, if we had Wonder Woman on 8 screens, we might be alienating other films.
Well, and it means they're also no longer tied to release schedules, right?
Right.
Is like if I show up with my copy of Spaceballs and like say I want to rent your theater and show this movie, like they may have to still look into what it's going to cost to show it, but it's not going to be anything compared to, and like you said, put that cost then on the consumer to pay for the rights to show that movie. But at that point, any movie is fair game, right? As long as the company that made it is willing to allow for that price to be negotiated and then paid by the consumer, suddenly we're no longer tied to what did Warner Brothers just make. I don't have to wait to see Wonder Woman like I right now, like, because I can at any time in my life now going forward see it in a theater. There's that, like, you lose that drive of I need to see this weekend in the space with all of these people, because like that's just not the theater experience anymore.
Exactly. And I think that we are going to see a lot more of that, especially as that's how they've struggled to stay alive during what has continued to be the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
And now that it's becoming commonplace, like I hear older people talk about, oh yeah, we rented a theater and we got to see the new Wonder Woman and it felt so safe because we were with our bubble just in their space. And I'm like, I would have never thought, like I thought that would be a young person's thing to do. Not, and I'm not like throwing any aspersions or anything like that. It's just, it doesn't seem like the way you would target that specific demographic. And then I've looked out, and other theaters, like other smaller theaters who that is their target demo, are doing the same thing. And it's like $99 rent the theater. And it's like, yeah, if I'm going to the movies once a month to see the movie I care about, that kind of almost evens out if I find enough people. Like, if it's $10 for a movie ticket and I have 10 friends, we can rent this space to see this movie, and it only costs me what it would have cost to see the movie anyway.
Well, right. So like, so I was going to ask, like, what is the running cost for this sort of thing out there? Because I've got a couple of numbers from out here, and I'm curious how they line up.
So it seems like $99 is the minimum. Like $99 is the lowest price you're going to be able to pay to do it.
Yeah.
And then things change when it considers what movie. Like $99, you get the space and you get the show of a selection of older movies that they probably already had deals in place for, or their parent company has some stake in. Right. So that sort of thing. And then the price goes up as if it's newer movies that would be in like second run that are still they're still able to get their hands on, or new release films.
Yeah.
And
so
the most that I've seen it go up to is, I want to say like 189 is the highest I saw it. I haven't looked. I'm not going to do it. Like, I know that I'm not going to do it. But when I saw $99 to rent a theater, I'm like, that's a really good price. But I know that that's got to be like the bare minimum, that there has to go up. And you're just getting me in the door by saying for less than $100 you can rent this space.
Yeah, so that's pretty on point with what's going on out here too. About $99 is like the big special price that they put on everything, but they don't tell you what that includes, and you're totally like right. Like it's probably not like a new release film. It's probably doesn't come with any like perks or benefits or anything like that. But there are some deals out here where specifically like when Wonder Woman came out, they were like, "Whoa, so rent this theater for Wonder Woman plus everybody gets a popcorn and a soda for like $150, right?" And like that, and there's that a whole element to it. But the big thing that's part of the factor out here that is huge is that the normal family size out here, like this, and this is purely a Utah thing, but the normal family size is 7 people, like 5 kids and mom and dad. Like that is so like you're already talking about 7 people that are going to get to sit down and see this movie. So for $150, and it comes with a popcorn and soda for everybody, like that, why wouldn't you do that? You're already spending that normally when you go out to the theater to do that. So that's not a change in price at all for some people, right? And then the other big thing that's out here is that everybody is related to everybody. And what that means is that in terms of COVID bubbles, like a lot of the families out here that like see each other every Sunday for church just kind of kept doing it because they were all still family and like they were all seeing each other every day anyway. And I'm not going to make a judgment call on that as far as the COVID stuff goes, but I will say this: when it came time for like to rent theaters and stuff, it was a no-brainer for a ton of people out here because suddenly they could rent a theater and bring their entire bubble of 30 people. So that price suddenly dropped to $5 a person or something shit like that. Like it was it would be stupid of them to not be taking advantage of these things. And so like I am yeah, I feel like that kind of pricing model and stuff like that is awesome, and the theater gets more money in
They,
in,
they
in a
get
lot
more
of those
money in their
situations.
pocket. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it really kind of benefits everybody to kind of do things that way, and I don't think you're going to see that go away. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. I think that's how it evolves as a boutique industry right there. Jeez. I honestly I sit here right now as someone who loves film and cinema
Hmm.
thinking that I might never see another movie in the theater. Like
Yeah,
that's where I'm at. And not only because of everything that's going on, but just I've been able to adapt so that it's okay watching films at home.
yeah,
Like
man.
it's
We watched our first Sundance movie streaming last night.
okay. How was that?
Yeah, it was it well so Sundance has done really really good in this conversion over to the streaming service thing. One of the coolest things that I think that they did, and this is, it seems like a no-brainer now, but they put a test movie out earlier in the week for anybody that bought anything from them as far as the streaming service goes. They gave you a free screening of a movie and in 2 formats. So the way that they're doing their whole schedule is that you can pay up front to see a movie within a 3-hour window, and that is its like premiere, right? So what we did on last night, no, sorry, Thursday night, but what we did on Thursday night is we did Summer of Soul. Questlove directed the phenomenal documentary about this event in Harlem, this music festival in Harlem that was going on at the exact same time as Woodstock, that has been like lost to history because Woodstock just became the
Woodstock is
beast that it
Woodstock.
is,
Yeah.
right? Right. And so, and amazing movie. So if and when that ever comes out, highly encourage people to see it. So we bought the right to go and see it on Thursday night, and there was a 3-hour window, 8 to 11, that we could press play on the site to watch it. And at that point, you could, for 4 hours, you could pause it, you could rewind it, you could fast forward, you could watch it again. You had it for 4 hours. And then what they then do after that is it goes into the bank, and there is like designated days that it is going to be available anytime all day, and you can pay a certain amount of money to just have access to just basically everything that is up to this point played, as long as it's in that day, and you can just dip into the bank and watch whatever you want. And so we paid $15 to see it, 3 people to sit down and watch the Sundance movie, as long as we watched it within this specific time period. Or later we could pay $75 and then have access to everything in the bank, right? And then what they did earlier in the week is they gave everybody that had any skin in the game, like they gave you access first to the premiere so that you could watch it at the premiere time, and then they also gave it to you as a banked version the next day, just so that you could test both ways of watching out. and like they did it a week in advance, so you could like change your tickets if you needed to. You could get your like you could realize, oh, my internet just can't handle this, so I'm going to cancel everything. Like it was really really cool. So like we watched a test film earlier this week, and then we watched this movie on Thursday, and that's awesome. And we've got a whole lineup set up for Monday. Like we decided to throw some money at both the bank, so we're going to watch a bunch of the movies that have premiered all over the weekend. And on top of that, we put some money towards the shorts and animated stuff, so that basically they give you that as like a Netflix service. You pay a certain amount of money, and then for like a week you can watch any of like the documentary shorts, any of the animated shorts, any of the long form like new agey shit that they do. There's this stuff called the New Frontier, which is 4 or 5 projects every year that are just fucking weird. So one is like a VR experience, like it's very wild. Yeah, so they just it, it has been a little awkward navigating it, because it is clearly something that they did not put much thought or time into, within the last like 8 months. This is something they've been looking at, but before that it was clearly not even something on their radar. So like there is some awkwardness to how it is all laid out and how it is all explained. But that being said, it's a hell of an experience. And so to what we were talking about going forward, and like not seeing these things in a space, in a theater, like it's kind of nice, like with this kind of cinema watching, to not be beholden to a specific time schedule. Because like we're talking about a festival, there's like 9 movies that I want to see, and like what the math used to be is like, oh well, I can't see 3 of them because they're playing at the same time as this one, and if I don't see this one, then I'm not seeing anything. Like, and so I don't have to worry about that, right? Or like I the idea of space selling out is still something that's really interesting to me, because they do only have so many quote unquote seats available.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that works is that 20 people buy tickets for this movie, and if like 10 of them don't show up, suddenly that opens up, and like it's exactly like what would happen in an actual physical theater space. But the difference is I don't need to go stand around at the theater and just wait hoping somebody doesn't show up.
Yeah.
I can just check in at the last minute, and if there's a space, there's a space. If not, I've only wasted a minute of my day, and it becomes so much easier to get into that. So like it has been so far an amazing experience. We'll see how things go over the weekend, because it was only like the first day of the true festival on Thursday. But man, it was something else to be able to. I mean, we took a break in the middle of the movie. It's an hour and a half long, and we all needed to take the dogs out to pee. We needed to pee. Like we were able to pause it and grab a drink, and then come back and get back to it. Like it was awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool, and that's so convenient. Like like we're not. I don't know. Like this has really shown that we were watching movies based on someone else's like schedule, and that wasn't great. And also, they were making bank off of us watching movies on their terms.
Yes.
So
yeah,
it's kind of cool that a bit of the power has been returned to us, and I really hope that it works out. What you just said, and that possibly Sundance spreads its wings a little bit, so that it's not just I don't know. Like I love the idea of the film festival, but the traveling and all of that is a hard part of it. But
yeah,
if it can become like
I don't think it's gonna completely disappear. And
Yeah.
I say that because there's actually a lot of talk right now from a lot of the old timers out here that are convinced that going digital this year is the death knell for the festival. And it's like, no, there's like Sundance as a company owns like just building after building out here.
Mhm.
They own houses all throughout Park City. There's events. There's an entire entertainment industry based around people showing up for 2 weeks every year. And if they don't do that anymore, like the state is going to like the fall apart from the bottom out. Like it is too important to Utah and too important to the people that run Sundance to stop doing the in-person festival every year. That's never going to happen. That being said, there's space here for them to grow and to reach more people if they make these, like if they put this stuff into place now at a time when they've kind of got the excuse to. It then allows them to have that infrastructure in place for them to kind of, as you said, like spread their wings. And I think that we are definitely, especially with something like Sundance, we are definitely going to see those moves starting immediately. Like as of next year, there will be a digital component to Sundance.
Yeah, I mean it'd be a death knell if they didn't do anything this year. That would
Right.
make me more nervous
Yes.
that
Yes.
that it's going to end, as opposed to we're going to try to find a way to still have this within the safest parameters available.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome. And I'm glad, and I am very excited to hear how everything works out. This Sundance watch and the fact that you're there at the foot of the mountain is wonderful.
Straight up took the day off
thank
on
you.
Monday. We're
Yeah.
gonna be in a hotel room watching a bunch of Sundance movies.
Nice. All right. So we need to talk about something that I
Yeah.
spent this week doing.
Yeah, let's shift gears a little bit here. You've been sending me pictures for 3 days, and I need to know what they all mean.
So I believe I've sent you 3 pictures, right, over the past since Tuesday. And those pictures, the first one I sent is my clear percentage first playthrough on the PlayStation 5. The second one is my playthrough on the Nintendo Switch, and the third one is my playthrough on the PlayStation 4.
Interesting.
Of a new game called Cyber Shadow. And it's super important to point out that even though it has been published and released by Yacht Club Games,
Okay.
they did not develop it.
Okay.
It was all developed by Arne Hunziker, aka Mechaskull on the internet. And it's another one of those Axiom Verge-esque games where it was just the one dude who did everything. He outsourced the music. That's the one thing that he was unable to do. He wanted to hire someone to do the music. I don't know if it's unable, but he hired somebody to compose the music for the game. But everything else, the mechanics, the level design, all of that comes from a single source. And people need to know that, because I feel like they don't. And that is why overwhelmingly the response to Cyber Shadow has been less than positive.
Yeah, well, part of it is because Yacht Club, when they put their name on it, like, we're talking about the guys that did Shovel Knight, right?
Exactly.
And this is supposed to be their step away from the Shovel Knight madness, because that's been going on for almost a decade now. And so I think that they did a disservice because they were very openly talking about this game as their move away from Shovel Knight. And so now people think like, oh, Yacht Club made this thing. Like, that idea that Yacht Club actually just kind of published it is, first of all, like, news to me, and like, secondly, I feel like I've been lied to about what this game was supposed to be then, because this is a much more interesting story to me, is this idea that this one person has been kind of putting their heart and soul into this thing. And that includes your stories about, this is the one that you went to go play at PAX, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you were able to give feedback to this creator, right?
Mm-hmm. Which, he was there. I didn't realize that he was there at that event. I thought that it was just a Yacht Club event and they were doing it, but come to find out, reading interviews and stuff, he was there. So that feedback that I gave, that was most assuredly incorporated into the game. And it feels so strange that so the third boss fight was the one that I played at PAX. I now know that, having played through the game. And I'd been in the line for about an hour, like, conservatively. I've told the story a bunch of times, but I'll try to do it quick. And I got to watch people play the fight. And, you know, I'm kind of a rote video game player. I can sight play games, and also, like, if I watch someone else do it, I kind of learn what's happening.
Yes, Polygon actually just did a video on sight reading games, by the way, and I was thinking of you the entire time.
So watching people play it, and then I'm like, okay, so here's what you want to do there. Here's how you can optimize it, so that by the time I get into the seat, I rush through it, and you pick up an item beforehand that's now called the swag blade. I don't know if that's what it was called at the time, but it's a big yo-yo blade that spins around you and moves in relationship to how you move. So if you run to the right, once you stop, it will continue moving with the momentum it gained. So it's an interesting item. And at the time that I played that demo, all of those type items were time related. So you'd collect it and you'd have the boost for a limited amount of time.
Right.
Which is an interesting way to do it. But then when I was able to beat the boss and still have that active, so then it goes into a cutscene and it's still spinning around me, and they're like, oh, we never really looked into that. Like, what happens if you get, we thought that the time would run out. like based on how the boss fight was.
Yeah.
So now they've modified it. And so first of all, it loses all emotional heft when you have this stupid blade spinning around you.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, I'm dying. You need to save our clan. It's like, hold on a second. This guy's having fun.
I'm also really curious how that worked because well, I mean, like now having seen the game, right? Like it's not a 3D rendered game. Why were they using the same sprite? It's interesting because that showed that they were programming the use of the sprite that you were actually playing on, which is not necessarily always the case in those situations. And so it's yeah, I wonder if that is just
right.
Again, showing that it is one guy working on this thing and not a team of people, because normally the cutscene would be handled by a completely different group of people.
Well, I mean, so cutscene isn't great. It's not a cinematic cutscene. It's a cutscene where you're talking and interacting and pressing buttons and all that. But then it stayed active that whole time, so it would have gone over the length of the timer on the item. Yeah. And now those items, you have 3 hits, so you'll collect the blade, and if you get hit while you have it for 3 times, that's when it goes away.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, so that's a big difference to the time aspect of it. It also means that if you're good at not getting hit, you can hold on to these items longer throughout the game. And it feels like that conversation that I had with the people about, you know, I'm holding on to it because I got through it. Like, it feels like it affected it. And I know that's on my level, and I'm going to be the hero of my own story. But it did feel like, oh, that's interesting to see it still there. And I still was able to beat the boss with that active in my first playthrough. And that made me smile. Because, like, it triggered my own nostalgia for a game that just released, but that I got to play 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but the fact that it's not really a Yacht Club game... I mean, Yacht Club games... For all that they've done in this decade of Shovel Knight, have only really released one game. And that is Shovel Knight, and it's 4 DLCs. Because Showdown, it's sort of Super Smash Brothery, but it's not like Yacht Club games burst onto the market and has like created hit after hit. I mean, you can have that discussion about Spectre Knight doesn't feel anything like Shovel Knight, but at its core, it's still the same Shovel Knight base game.
Yeah.
Like, it's still the same levels you're going to, basic level elements, being sort of Mario Maker together to make the game. So, yeah, like this game, when they announced it and they kind of hid the fact that it was being developed by this dude, a little strange. Just a little strange. And then, like, the UI, right? I feel like that's something else that maybe Yacht Club games brought to it. It looks like Shovel Knight. You go into the file load screen and it's the same exact file select screen that you got in all the Shovel Knight games, and like they didn't do enough to distance themselves from Shovel Knight. And that is a problem because you're already comparing this game to Shovel Knight because it's the Yacht Club brand.
Right.
And if there's anything that from that game is just how good it is. And Cyber Shadow is not as good as Shovel Knight. Is going to be the nicest thing that I say.
Yeah, so what's going on with this game, man? Because you're not the first person to kind of be a little let down by it. So I'm curious to know.
Yeah. So my issue the first time through, it's a game of frustration, right? As you play it, you'll find things, and if you get frustrated, it becomes a time sink trying to get past a single obstacle. And it's one of those ones where you need to walk away and come back to it. So doing like a speed run of this game, like, is difficult because your attention to the game wavers a little bit. Like, you're very invested in the beginning, and then you start to fade, or you're like, oh, I've done this so much in the beginning, and then the new stuff gets you excited. It's hard to keep the same level of excitement and engagement the whole way through, which is strange.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially if you're, I mean, I can see that happening though when you start repeating sections and not in like interesting and new ways, but the same way, and you just keep hitting a wall. Like, I mean, it is the issue that I have with things like a Dark Souls or something like that, is like, after a while, and you're right, it becomes a walk away situation. But after a while, you're just doing the same thing, seeing the same screens, seeing the same stuff, and it's the same effect at the end as you just keep failing, and you're not being rewarded in any way. It wears you down, and that's not fun. It's not.
Right. And it's not helped by the fact that checkpoints are very far away from each other as you get deeper into the game. Like in the beginning, they're pretty fairly spread out. Like you're not like, oh my god, I just lost all this time by losing. So and then as you get deeper into the game and it's more rooms between checkpoints, that starts to wear, because it's like we spoke the same language, me in this game, and now suddenly he wants to have conversational French discussions. And I'm like, and I know enough to know where the bathroom is and how to, order some cheese, but I can't go as fast as you. I need to learn this language again. And the language is the best analog I can make, because a lot of homage and inspiration goes into this game. So it becomes this pastiche, and the fact that it's trying to be an all-in-one, right? We've talked about this before. If you buy a VCR and TV set, combination, it's not a great TV and it's not a great VCR.
Right.
All of these reminders of other games so close to each other, it kind of feels like I could be playing that game, right?
I should just play those, yeah.
And that is its biggest disservice to itself, is, oh, now I'm playing Contra. Oh, now I'm playing Mega Man. Oh, now I'm on a motorcycle for some reason. And...
well, they got to get their Battletoads in there somehow.
Yeah. Now I'm in a mech suit, and it doesn't feel like the game I've been playing for the last 7 levels.
Weird.
It's just... it just happens. And I'm fine with a game that just happens, right? I've played plenty of them. Battletoads is a very good example of a game that just sort of happens as you're playing it.
Yeah.
But where this game loses you is it also tries to have this like deep, enriching story. And the first time through, I'm reading and I'm looking at everything that I can to understand the lore of it. But then my next 2 playthroughs were infinitely more fun, as I'm just like, I don't care about your story. I don't care about your 20-minute like exposition dumps that don't really add anything to this. There's no like emotional heft that's being added by your story. And like, it's very wordy. The script is very, very wordy.
And that's a shame, because that's where it needs to shine. If you're going to make a game that's going to just go wherever it wants to go, and like you said, there's plenty of games that do that. The reason that those games work, though, when they do, is because there is a narrative that is bringing you through from moment to moment that makes it all work, makes it make sense. I mean, like, if that's not there, then yeah, I would just be nothing but frustrated the whole time.
Yeah, it doesn't. You're not like rewarded with like, oh my god, great story stuff. Like that's, and there's no consequence to dying. Which like I know that we've gotten to a place where like Dark Souls is all about dying, but if you die and you can't get back to where you were, you lose your souls in a Dark Souls game. And Shovel Knight incorporated that with like half of your money each time, so that like it wasn't a forever penalty, but there was still a penalty, and there was incentive to get back to where you were. Right. This game, dying just brings you back to the last checkpoint.
Yeah, and you're not like learning anything new each time you die, right? Like, because that's the other way that you can reward people, is rather than having like a physical reward, you can at least have like a narrative or what they would call a ludological reward, like the idea that you're learning to play it better. And if you're not learning to play it better from death, if you're not getting any story benefit from dying, and you're not physically losing anything, then what all you're doing is slowing you down.
Yeah, it's like the death doesn't act as enough of a deterrent to want to learn to be better.
Right.
Like, there are times where I'm like, oh, I took damage, I'm just going to kill myself, so I start with the full health bar again. Because I didn't take damage there before, and it's woefully unbalanced. And that's disappointing. Now, I've played through it 3 times, and, it's on Game Pass for Xbox, and I almost did it a 4th time, but the one last night, I was cruising along. I started at 10 o'clock last night, and I'm like, I think I can finish this one like by 1. Like I was like agreeing to play for at least 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then at 1 o'clock, I just hit like a weird wall in a place where I had never hit the wall before in the game at all. Like everything else up to that point had been going so smoothly, and I'm like, this place has never given me an issue before. What has happened?
What system were you on last night?
I was on the PS4.
So the PS4, I mean, not a huge leap from the PS5 in terms of control, I have to imagine, right? Like, or
I feel like
it
it controls better, to be
Really?
honest. Like, I was able to. There are feats, right? Because it's a Shovel Knight game. It's a yacht club game, so they also incorporated the feats system where it's like accomplishing things, and I accomplished every feat that was presented to me in the game on my third playthrough, and I feel like the controller was a big part of that, just because it's familiar territory, as opposed to the bit wider DualSense controller. But you know, one of the reasons why when I saw that it had a separate trophy list and all that, I wanted to play through the PS4 version was prior to the game releasing, I had messaged Mecha Skull to be like, do you have a recommendation between the PS5 or the PS4 build? Are there any like definitive differences? And he didn't get back to me, and that makes sense, right? Your game's releasing. You're probably getting approached by more important people than Devin Decker in his basement in Coventry, Rhode Island. I get that. But, like, I'm like, well, I'm going to test, and I'm going to see. And no, there's no difference. I didn't notice any, like, major differences in terms of frame rate or control or anything like that. Not even load times. Like, the game is basically the game wherever you're going to play it. My big complaint is on the Nintendo Switch because, oh my god, the D-pad on the Pro Controller is garbage.
Yeah.
I hadn't realized that until the big thing about Cyber Shadow is he wanted it to be playable on an NES controller. And that's a cool idea, but when you're collecting 8 different items, and those 8 items need to all be activated using only a D-pad and 2 face buttons, you're gonna run into weird issues. Like, to dash, you double tap, but to parry, you tap once. And
so a lot of freak out parry double dash shit.
a lot of times where I'm like, I thought I was gonna parry that, but then I ran through, and then I fell in a hole. Okay, I thought, and you learn the parry first, so like all your muscle memory and how to perform the parry and use it within the game goes away when you get the next upgrade.
Yeah.
And so it's cool, but you know, it makes it feel weird. And to have a D-pad that doesn't have like a good center point and it's very easy to be hitting right and up at the same time, I go to slash my sword and I'm throwing shurikens and I'm like, well, that's awful. That's not what I wanted to do at all, game. So of my 3 experiences, the Nintendo Switch was my worst experience in terms of that. And I don't know if you're playing on, like, I have the NES controller and I would like to do a run through of the game with one of the NES Joy-Cons that they released that were like special limited release to people who had Nintendo Online, and see how it plays on that, because that is a better joypad. I know that it's a better D-pad, but like, I'm not incentivized to go back and play the game right now. And that might be the biggest issue. I think that's where a lot of the issues stem from, is in terms of movement tech, you don't have the full arsenal available to you until the end of the 7th level. And the last thing you get is the double jump. And the one right before that is the dash. So all the things that you would want to movement tech through a game like this are locked behind a lot of game. And that's fine, right? Because there are plenty of games like that. But there's no New Game Plus.
Right, yeah. Like, once you're rewarded with those things, what do you do with them? Because like, if you've already gotten through stuff,
like, it's just now the next 3 levels you're gonna play through, you need to use the double jump. That's just the game now. And it's so weird because part of the issue is, oh man, this jump's just a little too long, and then it's like, all right, I have a double jump now, but like, it's just like a pixel too long. It's like, it doesn't incorporate having that movement tech into it. And then
Yeah.
like you can also go to the first 3 levels and then access areas that were locked to you before,
Mhm.
and you get, magic upgrades so that you can throw more shurikens or similar. And those are fun, but everybody's like, it's sort of Metroidvania. It's like, no, it's not. It's like going back to the Donut Plains 1 after you've hit the green switch and being able to climb up a wall to get to the key exit.
Yeah, it's not really Metroidvania because you don't need to go back for those upgrades too, right? Like it sounds like they're just like you can throw more shurikens, which is great, but you don't need that to get to the end of the game. Which in Castlevania and in Metroid, like if you wanted to get to like the end, you needed to go back and revisit places. So like there's a necessity is like key to those games.
I've watched a lot of like streamers finish the game, and I have not seen anybody do 100% run. And that really speaks to what you just said.
Mm.
Like all 3 of my runs have been 100% runs, and not for any other reason than there's a trophy assigned to getting a 100% run of the game.
Yeah.
Like when I'm not playing to get trophies, I don't think I'm going to go back to do the first 3 levels to get those upgrades, because at the end of the day they're not that important.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Real
So
bummer.
yeah, but the real thing is that it's normal game mode, right? So you think that after
Mhm.
you beat it, you might get a hard mode or you might get a new game plus, and those things just don't exist. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really doubt that they'll be like coming, because of just how much work the single developer put into the game, and the fact that it's immensely playable. I think I ran into one glitch last night, and it was purely cosmetic. I ended up running through a room, and the floor was flashing at the end, probably because like the klaxons from the beginning of the room were still going on, and
Mm.
it wasn't prepared for that to be happening. And I went back and it was fixed, and it had no ill effect on it. What I'm saying is, I don't think there's going to be a patch on this game
Yeah.
because it's not a team of developers.
Well, and that's really weird coming from Yacht Club, who, as we at the beginning of this whole thing famously, has just worked on the same game and just released more and more and more and more content for it for a decade. To have their follow up be something that feels like there's not it's not worth doing that for is a shame. I mean, but that being said, maybe what we saw with what happened with Shovel Knight, maybe we will see other modes and versions and stories within this world that we didn't before, and maybe one of those will get you.
I mean,
Yeah,
so
it's
yeah,
it's it's a
spoilers
it's a
for Cyber
sad, shaky
Shadow.
start.
Sorry. Say it's a sad start. Is that? I'm sorry.
It's just it's a sad start to this IP is all I was gonna say.
Yeah. Well, I think the other issue is it came out right on the heels of The Messenger. This was announced, and everybody was immediately comparing it to The Messenger. And the fact of the matter is, and we did a review on The Messenger, and I was kind of down on The Messenger in the beginning, and now I love that game. It was
Yeah.
completely the fact that the Nintendo Switch at the time could barely handle the game.
Yeah.
Like it was
Yeah.
overheating, and then they released a patch so that the processor wouldn't overclock and have
Yeah.
issues. People will just go play The Messenger because
Yeah.
The Messenger gives you all the things that you want that this game doesn't,
Yeah.
and that's sad. But also, spoilers for the end of Cyber Shadow. There's a post-credit scene where a dude with a falcon comes down and like USB ports into your brain and takes your mind out. And I feel like, is that a continuation? Is that potential DLC? I don't know. That's the most compelling bit that happens in this, and it's all visual. I didn't also talk about the story. You're a robot. You're a ninja who got blown up, and now you're in a robot body. That's the story of the game. You don't need more than that, I guess. I forget that he's a robot because he just looks like a ninja, and then you go to the cutscenes, and he's got like a shiny blue body and metal arms, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're a robot. I forget that you're a robot in this game because nothing indicates that I'm a robot.
Weird, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that's what's coming out right now with that game, but I I am still like, especially now, like I said, like knowing that one person is really behind like the driving force behind that game, and it seems like it was really a passion project for this one person, and not just like a yacht club doing anything they could to distance themselves from Shovel Knight, and like so. I am now much more curious in at least knowing what's going to happen with that game more than I was when we started this conversation. So I'll say that.
Yeah, and I hope that there's more. And again, I'm still gonna keep playing it. I'm probably not gonna release the pictures to you like I did, but I wanted to show you that like I've completed them and here's how I've improved. Because during that first one, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever play this game again. Like it's so frustrating, it's not fun. And then when the final reveal is you don't get a new game plus, so there's not even really incentive to play it again. You're just starting from base and going and with the knowledge in your head that I could be moving much better right now. You've only done yourself a disservice, game. So that's weird. But you know, last night I beat the final boss on my first try. Like I got through it in one life without dying, and that felt good. And I'm like, so I am learning things. It's just the game doesn't seem to let me know that I'm learning things. It has to be a personal thing, and that's strange on the heels of Shovel Knight, where not that it was tapping you on the head, but like it found a way to communicate with you.
Well, and like good games, like from the beginning of video game history, and even before video games, board games, like good play like sets off like the dopamine receptors in your brain, and you are rewarded and you feel good, and video games have learned, like the best video games have learned to let you feel that, no, like in all of these different ways and moments. So you're when we talk about being rewarded, it's not just like here's a bunch of gold for doing a good job. It's not just here's a new game plus for you to now play. It is also that feeling of like joy and pride and accomplishment. Like when a game rewards you, you feel good, and the fact that they can't find the time to do that is poor game design, like to be not nice about it.
Yeah, and I do feel like we're being not nice about it. And I still recommend, it's worth a playthrough. Like I said, if you have Xbox, it's on Game Pass, so feel free to download it. I don't know if it's on the Windows version of it. I know that it's specifically on the console side, but it's worth a play. And I'm glad that I was able to get it at a discount, because in pre-ordering it was like $5 off. And if I had to pay the full price for the game, I think it'd be a different conversation. But it also, you know, oh, I want to add this level that feels like this. And it's like, but that's different from everything that came before it. And it's sort of, and I hate to prove it, it proves why more than one cook in the kitchen with games is sometimes a better way to prepare them.
Yeah, even Peter Jackson needs an editor, man. Like I am a firm believer in like art needs to be created through collaboration. And yeah, there's one or two people out there that'll disprove that, but they're the exception that proves the rule. Is like the fact that like you can have somebody out there like well, I mean, like you mentioned Axiom Verge, or like I think of Stardew, right? And the fact that we can have those kinds of games every once in a while that prove that like one person putting their fucking like nose to the grindstone can put out a phenomenal piece of gaming. The reason that we hold those up, and the reason that we talk about that being so rare, is because here we have an example of somebody trying that and it just not having the same result at the end.
Yeah, and I also don't see, and this is nothing, this is no negative there, I don't see him putting the time in to refine this game. I feel like, unlike those other games, they released early and there were still ideas. I think he put every idea into this game and made sure that they were refined and finished. And if I'm proven wrong, I will come here and I will admit it, and I will test out what happens. But it doesn't seem like the kind of game that's going to be getting a 1.5 that introduces beach farms. I mean, not mostly because you're in a post-apocalyptic hellscape and a robot, so what need do you have for farming? But secondarily, it feels like this is what 1.5 of the game would be.
Yeah.
And that's good, right? Like, I want to celebrate that. I want to celebrate getting a complete game on release day. Because that doesn't happen ever anymore. Like, this game...
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, and just one other thing I want to talk about on the game. It's an interesting concept. I don't think it's used to its greatest potential. Is the checkpoint system. You can buy upgrades to each checkpoint. So when you first get to a checkpoint, like, it'll only recover your health to like half, but you can dump in 50 gold points and it will fully fill your health. And then it will also do that for like your magic. And sometimes it'll give you an item like, you know, a charge blaster or a shield every time you start from there. And that's a really cool idea, but conceptually I don't think it's put into play the best it could be in this game. It feels like maybe it was an idea that came later to it as a way to try to offer a reward or a mitigation to people not doing good.
It really feels like a step into the roguelike of of like a Hades or a Binding of Isaac or something, like the idea that you can put a little money towards showing up with an item so that like you can play in a different way or try and get through something that maybe you're getting stuck on, like and it's I'm not surprised it's not fully fleshed out, because that's something that's become very popular within the last like 2 or 3 years. And if this is something that this guy was working on to the point where you were playing a demo at PAX 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
2 years ago,
like like then that is definitely something that was integrated into this game that was maybe not there to begin with. And I'm just talking about my ass. Maybe this is, but if that's the case, then it's not. It doesn't sound like it's fleshed out enough.
It feels like an afterthought, considering I didn't really incorporate it going forward into my other 2 playthroughs. Like, it feels like this is a nice way to like try to communicate with the player, but it also gets to a point where I'm just gonna buy everything because I have the money to do that. Like, it's supposed to be, try this area the first time, and then if you die, buy the upgrades. But you have the money, you're probably going to buy the upgrades. Like, it doesn't work as cleanly as it could. But I do want to commend it as an interesting idea that I don't hate.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. Cyber Shadow's worth a try. But also, if you're getting frustrated, don't be too proud or stubborn to keep playing. And I think that gives all the information about how I played this game the first time. With hubris.
Oh, man.
So, yeah. Well, I think that's everything I got. Anything else you'd like to add before we send this one off?
No, let's put a lid on this one.
All right, cool. So if you would like to share any of your own personal cinema film festival stories with him, Siegen can be found on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
And if anybody out there is checking out Cyber Shadow or anything else, you can always hit Devin up at Devin D. Decker and talk to him about that.
All right, so until next time, let's send it off to our own personal wolf who does eat salad. Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Siegen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.